Yeah, chat, like if cats run society, but that's a fascism that I would support. Catism. Catism, Bolshevism. So let's watch what extremely mainstream academics think that fascism is actually is. Probably going to hit quite a few points correctly, but let's explore it. Let's explore it because apparently nobody fucking knows what it is. And we're going to watch the 10 Tactics of Fascism. 10 Tactics of Fascism by Jason Stanley. Thank you kindly.
Fascism is a cult of the leader who promises national restoration in the face of supposed humiliation by immigrants, leftists, liberals, minorities, homosexuals, women, in the face of what the fascists...
Any sort of outgroup that they can point at as a throwaway from the actual analysis that people are coming to, which almost always is a class-conscious analysis on why they're being fucked. That is why we very commonly use the term that fascism is an outgrowth of capitalism, or more importantly, fascism is capitalism in decay. Those two systems are directly interlinked, and one absolutely grows out of the other. It cannot grow just spontaneously out of, I don't know, a fucking feudalist system or whatever, even though we could call it that, but in that case, it would just be feudalism. We would use a different word.
This leader says is a takeover of the country's media, cultural institutions, schools by these forces. And that's why you need a really macho, powerful, violent response. The fascist leader says he will solve the problem. Fascism is right-wing by nature. It's based on ultranationalism. However, you can have ultranationalist movements that are ultranationalist movements of minority groups. There is left-wing authoritarianism. There are bad things on the left. Stalin...
Hey, us in the video where we talk about fascism, let's make sure we mention the bad socialists and their big spoons. God, I wish I called this out before it happened. I knew it was gonna fucking immediately pop up.
Many people. Mao killed many, many people. These are terrible figures, but not all terrible things are fascist. Fascism is a very particular ideological structure. When thinking about fascism, you can't think about these individual elements in isolation.
Thank you very much.
They come as a bundle.
Yes, they do come as a bundle. They absolutely do come as a bundle. Fascism at its core is belief that hierarchies are how we are supposed to run our world. There are strong and there are weak, and the strong deserve to be on top. How do you define strong or weak, though? You can define it through the prism of man and woman. You can define it through the prism of race. You can define it through the prism of religion, okay, in the case of Israel. Many different prisms. But again, the main thing to concentrate on is hierarchy is all. Well, socialist and anarchist doctrines want to build towards a world in which as many hierarchical structures that can be criticized are criticized and are removed from the equation because, hey, having a boss, having an oppressor, having somebody who gets to tell you what you do is not the direction that we want to go towards as a society. Well, the fascist says, no, quite to the contrary. By pursuing this sort of mentality, you will create nothing but chaos and destruction. And most importantly, you will not allow those who are truly strong and deserve their place as the strong to be removed from the equation. And in a capitalist concept, the strong are two groups. The ones that have established themselves as the super wealthy and the ones that have established themselves in high-ranking positions in the military. So the muscle guys and the cash guys. Unless you're the big muscle guy and cash guy, you do not deserve to rule this little state of ours. That is the core of it. But how does that then replicate, as this gentleman that had to mention Big Spoon Man because God forbid we make moderate right-wingers angry, but he's still properly assessed. How does that connect to absolutely everything, like sexism, racism, etc., etc.? Well, in my opinion, to an extent by circumstance, because they need to find what they define as being strong through, okay? So they can define it through literally who has the biggest muscles, and we create a fascist state in which everybody, fucking fist fights all the time or pulls up weights, and the ones that, have the biggest fucking biceps curl, they're the ones that get to run our society. Very simple, idiotic explanation, but you get my point. Or we can concentrate on things that are much more divisive right now, which is race, class, which is never class, which is race, gender, and so on. Things we don't agree with, and therefore things that we can manipulate towards the direction of divide and conquer to an extent. So fascism uses all those different isms, all those different reactionary mechanisms of hatred and bigotry to redefine who gets to be the big boss and who gets to be the small boss. And out of all of them, at the end of the day, the class dichotomy of if you own the means of production, you get to be the boss, and if you work, you have to be the slave because, hey, you didn't have the idea, you didn't have the capital, you didn't invest the risk, all the other bullshit arguments. That's why you need to eat shit and understand that your position in the hierarchy is that of a lesser and something that you need to completely accept. Can fascism exist without any of those isms? Yeah, it can be an insane fascism, literally. The people with the curls, but then we probably would, with the belt with like the biceps curls, but we would then have a new ism for that, and it would be discrimination based on biceps size. Those isms, again, are a consequence of the hyper-hierarchical idea of how society is supposed to run. They're not like the core. They're not at the core. They're not the structure, they're the superstructure, okay?
University, and the author of 5 books, most recently, How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them.
Yeah, chat, like if cats run society, but that's a fascism that I would support. Catism. Catism, Bolshevism.
We forget that many fascist regimes started off...
Who says you don't get theory hour here?
...as democratic political parties. We forget that Hitler, the Nazi party, ran in an election. Fascist parties start as fascist social and political movements before they come to power. So it's important.
That's at least what we had up until now. That's the vision of socialism, of fascism that we've had up until now. Doesn't mean that that's the same path that they're going to take. Just like we have Leninists and Maoists and Trotskyists and all sorts of socialists, fascists also have all sorts of fascists. And they believe in different ways of achieving this particular thing. The most successful ones of them being the Nazis, which succeeded in this particular pattern. Get your boot through the door, through electoralism, and then use that small inkling of power that you've given to grow your power even further, because now you have legitimacy, because you've gotten into parliament, etc., etc.
See that these tactics occur even in societies that do not have a fascist regime. All nationalism involves a mythic past. So you can say, look...
And again, now he's going into the analysis of fascism, which concentrates itself on the national question, on the ethnic question. Why am I pushing this so much? Because nationalist-led fascism has lost so many times, the fascists of the future will concentrate on different things. And right now, the fascists of the modern age, in my opinion, are concentrating on gender more than absolutely anything else. The loss of masculinity, at least in the West, the loss of masculinity and how we should blame the woman and more importantly, the trans woman for it.
We're Polish people who spoke Polish and were sheep herders, and another bunch of Polish people who were fishermen. You can talk about how things were wonderful when we were all Polish together. That's a fine mythic past. But then there's the fascist mythic past. In the past, we were great. Wherein did our greatness consist? In our military. And in the past, the dominant racial group ruled over others. And then the fascist leader says, that has been taken from you by the leftists and communists. They want to weaken our military. They want to weaken our greatness.
Yes, and it can be weakening of military, it can be weakening of national greatness, but it can be weakening of us as men. It can be weakening of us as women, sure. I can see in 100 years when women get to the same rank as men, developing fascist movements. Where the fuck not? It's not linked to anything. Black people can develop a fascist movement. Roma people can develop like some of the most oppressed, if they were to get on a point at which they can become oppressors, the majority in the state, and ones that believe that something has been taken away from them, etc., etc. Fascism doesn't have to be white European, okay?
Propaganda is ubiquitous, and everyone uses propaganda. In political propaganda, your main message...
Like Israel, exactly. Thank you, Ticino. Yeah. The greatest victims of 20th century fascism, and look at the unfortunate situation in which we find ourselves in that we have to point out. But that's why it's extremely important to differentiate Zionism from being Jewish, because those two things have nothing to do with each other. You know, Ratko Mladic doing genocide in Bosnia has nothing to do with Serbianhood. The Croatian Ustasha massacring people in World War II doesn't have anything to do with being Croatian, etc., etc.
Message is something other than the information you're conveying. Fascist propaganda is a very particular structure. It's based around a friend-enemy distinction. The political opponent, they are a merciless threat to your very existence and your traditions. They are the other. When they are in charge, it subverts the nation.
How many bucks are we putting on that he's not going to mention class in the analysis in any way, or that fascism is capitalism bleeding, or any of this sort of stuff? I'm putting $20 right now.
So the structure, fascist propaganda, is based on the idea that the other are fundamentally opposed to the nation. As Hitler says in Mein Kampf, science is only useful insofar as it strengthens the nation. Fascism is a cult of the leader. It involves the leader setting the rules about what's true and false. So any kind of expertise, reality, all of that is a challenge to the authority of the leader. If science would help him, then he can say, okay, I'll use it. Institutions that teach multiple perspectives on history in all its complexity are always a threat to the fascist leader. The center of democracy is truth. You're not free if you've been lied to. Equality requires truth.
Bro.
Because equality in democracy doesn't mean we all have the same amount of money. It doesn't mean we all have the same car. It means political equality, that each of our voices matters the same. And political equality means speaking truth to power. If someone really powerful is humiliated when they're caught lying...
Yes, but cock academic man, if you speak truth to power and power doesn't move or budge, then you're just shouting in the fucking void. You're the fucking insane drunk guy walking down the street screaming about aliens. There's no difference between those two. That's why they gave it to you, because it doesn't do shit, okay?
Equality. So if you're going to rip the heart out of democracy, you get people used to lies. Here's a fact about humans. We all pretty much suck to the same degree. One group of us is not better than another group of us. Hierarchy is central here because it's the big lie at the center of things. What is racism but one big lie?
Okay,
Racism is the lie that
God
one
bless.
group is better than another.
Yeah.
You're told this religion is better, this race is better, this gender is better. It's really a moral claim, has more moral worth. And then once you have hierarchy set up, you can make people very nervous and frightened about losing their position on that hierarchy. Hierarchy goes right into victimhood, because once you convince people that they are justifiably higher on the hierarchy, then you can tell them that they're victims of equality. German Christians are victims of Jews. White Americans are victims of Black American equality. Men are victims of feminism. Once you convince people that they should be better, that they have earned a position on the hierarchy over others, then you can tell them that equality is actually victimhood. Loyalty to the...
Let's repeat that.
Once you convince people that they should be better, that they have earned a position on the hierarchy over others, then you can tell them that equality is actually victimhood.
How is that not capitalism? How is that not capitalism? Therefore, how can we find differences between fascism and capitalism? One is just the radical version of the other one, which extrapolates the idea that certain people are better than others on a class basis over to ethnic, gender, religious, and so on aspects of society. Same thing.
Loyalty to the dominant group
Yeah, it's
means law-abidingness.
It's literally, they're the same picture.
And the minority group is by its nature not law-abiding. Law and order in fascist politics means the members of the minority group who accept their subservient role, they're law-abiding. And the members of the dominant group, by their very nature, are law-abiding. By definition, the leader can't violate law and order.
Yeah, and here you need to read Gramsci on the idea that we identify with whatever the bourgeois define as culture and ethics whenever we exist inside of the capitalist structure. But that applies to any other system. We change how we view normality. And because we've existed under the umbrella of capitalism for so long, what Gramsci says is that we've internalized this bourgeois idea that they get to be on top and that it's okay for us to be, their little worker bees. And we should also be very happy about it.
So law and order doesn't mean justice. Law and order doesn't mean equality. Law and order structures who's legitimate and who's not. Everywhere around the world, no matter what the situation is, in very different socioeconomic conditions, the fascist leader comes
I go drink my rakia.
and tells you, your women and children are under threat. You need a strong man to protect your families. They make conservatives hysterically afraid of transgender rights or homosexuality, other ways of living. These are not people trying to live their own lives. They're trying to destroy your life.
It's so fucking tasty. It's so fucking tasty.
Coming after your children. What the fascist politician does is they take conservatives who aren't fascist at all and they say, look, I know you might not like my ways. You might think I'm a womanizer. You might think I'm violent in my rhetoric. But you need someone like me now. You need someone like me because homosexuality, it isn't just trying for equality. It's coming after your family. Fascist movements typically, though not invariably, rest on an urban-rural divide. The cities are where there's decadence, where the elites congregate, where there's immigrants, there's criminality, there's Sodom and Gomorrah. In the city, there's not real work. The pure, hardworking, real members of the nation live in the rural areas where they work hard with their hands.
Yep.
When our politicians
It
talk
cannot
about
be applied to
inner city
anything.
voters or urban voters, we all know what they mean. Arbeit macht frei, work shall make you free. This was written on the gates of Auschwitz. The idea is that the minority group, they're lazy and they need to be made to work. Free labor. The minority group and the leftists, they're lazy by their nature, and it gives them a work ethic. Labor unions are run by communists who are trying to make things easier. Hard work is a virtue. In liberal democracy, we don't value people by how hard they work. What would happen to disabled people who can't work? They would then have no value. It's why the Nazis had the T4 program to murder the disabled, because the disabled were lebensunwertiges Leben, life unworthy of life, because to be valued was to be capable of hard work. Each of these individual elements is not in and of itself fascist.
And yet they never applied that same argumentation towards the uber wealthy that launched the way from generation to generation. They inherited their money and they grew their industrial capability. They even let other people manage. The only argument they could use for the century before that they were managing the thing, they even gave away to other class traders of proletarianhood, such as the upper management. But no, we only attach that to the weak that we can crush, to the disadvantaged that we can crush. Because we remember, no matter how fascistic we are, that it is the will of the people that governs everything. So if we tell the people that there is an enemy to look out for, we are pushing the perspective away from the actual enemy. And that is done organically. It's not really necessarily even a conspiracy that all fascists sit down and they're like, dude, we got to push this away. When it comes to their billionaire investors, it's very much so a strategy, because they're seeing unions rise, they're seeing socialist rhetoric rise, etc., etc. They do it as a planned sort of thing. But the fascist himself, he believes in this, because he is so enamored with the idea of potentially being at some point at the top of this new hierarchy, that he jumps at the first opportunity to join such a movement, because he is devoid of any sort of understanding of how the real world works. That's why I like to joke. Fascists are basically guys that want to play D&D in real life. And the other races that they hate actually end up dying physically. Fascism is D&D in real life, yeah. It's just imagining a fictitious world that justifies why you get to be on top, while completely ignoring the fact that you're sitting at a table and playing.
But you have to worry when they're all grouped together. When honest conservatives are lured into fascism by people who tell them, look,
there's so many libertarians, Randolph Cherry Pepper, there's so many libertarians, I don't like the current order, let's change things so it's the same, but I'm on top. But that's the fucked up thing. Those same very libertarians that are LARPing with their greasy ass fucking hair are gonna be the first ones to get fucked in a so-called libertarian utopia.
Look, it's an existential fight. I know you don't accept everything we do, you don't accept every doctrine, but your family is under threat. Your family is at risk. So without us, you're in peril. Those moments are the times when we need to worry about fascism.
Yep, they move away the focus. They just move away the focus on anything else. And that reminds us of many such cases nowadays, obviously. Fucking hell. Let's continue the conversation about fascism, about the Coca-Cola collaboration of World War II. I'm interested. I don't know anything about this. So let's learn. I'll play this video.
Yesterday when people usually
Please
post videos
link
about something
it
that didn't
to my
happen.
beauties, and I'm going to go take a piss as it starts, because I have not done so even once this entire